everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mel and today we are going to be talking about all of the books that I read in February. So the first book that I managed to get to in February was for the Catch Up Book Club or Elderling Along hosted by Becca at Becca in the Books, and that is City of Dragons by Robin Hobb. This is the third book in the Rainwilds trilogy, so I'm really not able to give a lot of description without spoiling the previous trilogies that come in Elderling Along, because this is the fourth trilogy, I believe. Basically, this is a quest type story about a group that has to weather the odds to get to a city, the City of Dragons. And again, for reasons that are spoilery, I won't tell you why they're on the way to City of Dragons. I know this is not overly helpful, but I did end up giving this book 4 stars. I didn't like the first 2 in this series as much as this one. This one brings back some old characters from the Live Ship Traders that I really enjoyed seeing again. I felt like there was a lot more plot and a lot less focus on the squabbling relationships between the characters, so I am loving the direction that this series is headed, and I cannot wait to read book 4, the final book in the Rainwild series, next month. So the next up is one that I'm reading for a read along with my dad. We are reading all of the books in the Expanse series by S.A. Corey every other month. He's watched the show and is now reading the books. I've never seen the show and am just reading the books, so it's an interesting dynamic and discussion when we do finish. But we are on Talibans War. This is the second book in the series. It opens with a ship being blown to smithereens, and we find out that there is this organism on one of the ships that has now spread throughout the galaxy. And it starts basically an interplanetary war between Earth, the outer planets, and Mars. That's really all I can say without giving too much away, but the first book is a very investigative type story. It's almost a mystery thriller wrapped up in a space opera. The thing that I didn't like as much about the first one was that it took a while to gear up. It took a while for me to really get to know and to care about what was going on with the characters and for the story, honestly, to start making sense. Whereas in this one, we kick off right from the very beginning with all of the characters that we got to know and love in Leviathan Wakes, as well as adding a few new ones. But whereas last time it took me a long time to really get to know the characters and understand their personality, in this one with the new characters, straight off the bat, they were already so much more fleshed out. We have some really sassy characters in this one that I absolutely loved. This was a 5-star read and it put me in a reading slump for like a solid week and a half. So highly recommend this series. The next one that I read in the month of February was another that was just kind of so-so for me. This was part of my Polarthon reads for a book with a foiled cover. Now, keep in mind, my book does not have a foil cover, but I do know that one exists, and that is Half a King by Joe Abercrombie. This book I gave about 3 stars. It follows a boy who is considered half a prince. He only has one hand, and because of this, he is just kind of cast aside, not thought to be a whole person, not thought to be a whole man. And that has followed him all his life. He knew he was never going to be king, and so he was going to go into the priesthood. Well, we open with him finding out that his dad and his brother, the heir to the throne, have died, and now he is going to be half a king. Fast forward a little bit, and there is an attempted assassination on Yarvi, and he gets sold into slavery. There's this whole thing where he has got to kind of come back and try to take back his throne. The thing that I loved in this book was the writing style. I felt like that was great. It was very engaging, easy to understand. I enjoyed it. It was fast-paced. But the thing that I didn't love that really hurt the story for me was the characters. And I think that's because Joe Abercrombie is so well known for his character development and his amazing character work that I just expected a lot more in this one. I didn't believe Yarvi's motivations. He went from a sniveling, meek boy to a I want revenge, but there wasn't any in between. There wasn't any lead up into his inner workings and his inner thoughts and why he got to that point. It just kind of went from point A, something happened, point B. and that really drew me out of the story. So I actually don't know that I'm going to be continuing with that series. It is a trilogy, but I think I'm going to put that one down for now and at some point try the First Law trilogy. And if I absolutely love that and it blows me away, I might eventually come back to this one, but for now, I just wasn't overly impressed. The next book that I read was the adventure prompt for Polarthon, and this book was gifted to me by the lovely Ash from Ash the Book Sloth, and that is The Longing of Lone Wolves by Laura Pachirkic. Ooh, I cannot say that last name. But I really enjoyed this one. This is a fantasy romance set in a dystopian world where the humans have kind of destroyed it and the Fae have come in and taken over. So this world has no metal because where there is metal, there cannot be magic. And there are all sorts of different kinds of Fae. Rush is a previous Fae guardian. It was his responsibility to kind of protect the realm and protect magic. And he was cursed for reasons that we will later find out. While Clark is a human that just wakes up in the middle of nowhere and has no idea what kind of world she has been dropped into. Come to find out, she is a seer and she is able to see the future. She finds herself in some trouble and Rush manages to get her out of it for a price. She has to basically do his bidding. I liked this book a lot. I found the latter half a lot better for me than the first half. The first half was a lot of info dumping and a lot of world building, and not in the way that I love. It wasn't the characters, it was more just the characters talking to each other and just telling them things, and I found that a little hard to believe because Rush is supposed to be this closed off character and Clark has literally just met this guy and he's telling her his entire life story and how this entire world works. But I did like the second half of this book when they really got to know each other and the relationships start developing. So I think this particular era of the wolf is 3 books and then we follow different guardians throughout. So I'm actually really looking forward. I'm going to continue this series for sure. So the next book is one that I was super excited to read. It is for the Backlist Book Club hosted by Cassidy with Covers with Cassidy. This is her first month that she's doing it, and the live show when you're watching this should be the Saturday after you're watching this video. And her first pick was The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. I was so excited when I heard that this was going to be the first pick because it's actually been on my shelves for a pretty long time now and I just had not gotten to it. This book follows Joran, who is become the captain of a black ship, and these ships are made of the bones of dragons. These are more sea dragons than they are your typical battle fighting land dragons, but their bones, similar to the live ships, are the only way that these people are able to travel the waters and fight the war that they've got going on. And Joran reluctantly accepts his position as captain of the Tide Child, a black ship where people are basically living dead. They're not going to ever be able to hold another place in society. They just roam this ship. But little does he know that he is about to get a rude awakening when another captain takes over his black ship for reasons all her own. I enjoyed this book. I will say that the first half was a little bit of a struggle for me because the writing style is very not lyrical and not overly formal, but kind of a combination of the two. He has a lot of really long sentences and lengthy prose that took some getting used to. This book is written in third person, so between the combination of all of that, it took me a while to really get my bearings and find out what was going on in this world. The first half is purely world building and atmosphere, and the plot doesn't really kick in until about 200 pages, well, 150 to 200 pages through. So once the plot kicks in, I liked this book a lot better. One of my favorite characters is introduced pretty early, but actually has a pretty prominent role later in the book. So I'm hoping with the way this one ended, I am going to enjoy the second book, Call of the Bone Ships, even more. But it's next month's book, so we shall see. This one was a 4-star read for me. And next up, we have the one that everyone has been reading this month that everybody expected, and I'm probably not going to hold this up the whole time because that is House of Sky and Breath, the massive chunker that is Crescent City 2 by Sarah J. Maas. This book, obviously, everyone has been reading. I'm sure you know what it's about at this point, but quick synopsis of the first book. Bryce is a half-fae that is living in Crescent City, and something happens that sets her off on a murder investigation, and she has to team up with a enslaved angel named Hunt to figure out what's going on and to solve this murder mystery. This book picks up a few months, I think, after the first book ends, but pretty much in the same vein. We are picking up right where the first one left off. I enjoyed that one a lot. I did find that the middle really slogged for me. I didn't find the pacing quite as good. And we do have a lot more characters in this one that get prominent page count. It's not just side characters in the background. They get kind of their own story. And that part I really enjoyed. The ending of that book, I'm still processing, still trying to figure out how I feel about it. I think I love it, but it's just going to kind of depend on where it goes. I ended up giving it a 4.5 star, I think 4.25 to 4.5. I'm really excited for Crescent City 3. I think it's going to be fantastic seeing how all of this intricate world comes together, but we could be waiting on that for another 2 years. So I'm sure you've seen all the Crescent City content at this point, so I'm just going to kind of leave it there. Those are my thoughts. I liked it a lot, but I think I might have liked Crescent City 1 just a little bit better. So the next book I read kind of alongside Crescent City. It was my audiobook to and from work. So thankfully I think it kept me from going in a House of Sky and Breath reading slump. But that is the 7th book in the Dresden Files series, A Deadbeat by Jim Butcher. I enjoyed this book. I like all of the books, but they are getting a little bit repetitive and they're not overly memorable. I feel like we're 7 books in and we really should be getting less monster of the week, more overall plot, because the series is going to be like 25 books long. So at some point, we've got to have a overall plot. This series as a whole follows Harry Dresden, who is a mage in modern day Chicago, where humans kind of know that something else out there exists, but they refuse to acknowledge it. And he gets roped into a lot of cases with the Chicago Police Department to help them solve the crimes, and honestly gets himself into more messes than he knows what to do with. This particular book focuses on Day of the Dead. It's centered around Halloween and a book to call forth the Great Hunt, which is pretty common in a fantasy series. I feel like at some point somebody does something with the Great Hunt. The thing that I liked about this book is it is super fast paced. It is tons of fun. You know what you're getting. But the things that I don't love is Butcher has a tendency to bring forth characters randomly and be like, oh, you've known this character for years, but they've never been mentioned before. Drives me crazy. We're 7 books in a series. Either introduce them as a new character or put them in the beginning of the series. The other thing that drives me crazy about this series is one that everybody fusses about, and that is that Dresden is a very chauvinistic and objectifying character of women. He, at one point in that book, says that he doesn't care unless it's a lady monster. Even if she's trying to kill him, he's not going to hit a woman. And I'm like, pretty sure if she's trying to kill you, you should probably hit a woman. Anyway, he also has a tendency to focus on women's breasts when they take in deep breaths. It drives me crazy. I know that these were written like in the early 2000s and the 90s and whatnot, but enough is enough. Let's move past it. Let's grow up in our writing style, because it's purely laziness at this point. And I think that will make these books tip over from okay, enjoyable to really great reads for me. So I had to go get the last book for February. Is one that I'm still currently in the middle of. I'm about 3/4 of the way through, and that is The Shadowed Sun by N.K. Jemisin. This is the second in the Dreamblood duology for the Busy Bee Book Club, hosted by Erin from Booked and Busy. We read the first one last month and everybody was kind of like, meh, it was okay, it wasn't terrible. It follows these gatherers that are able to go into people's dreams and take their dream blood when they die, and that feeds the world. They're able to heal with it and things of that nature. But if these gatherers go a little too far and they don't worship their goddess in the correct manner, they can turn into what is called a reaper and just go on a killing spree. This book is set I think it's a decade after the first book, and I'll just be quite honest with you, I'm 3/4 of the way through and I don't know what's going on. I think it's because I haven't really been paying as much of attention as I should have been, but I'm just not loving it. I think I'm liking this one even less than I liked the first one, which surprised me because I've heard that the second one is so much better, but character development is just not the strong suit in this one. The magic is barely explained at best. It's interesting, but we don't go into any kind of depth. And the atmosphere is good, and the writing style I enjoy, but that's just not enough to hold my attention to make this more than a mediocre book. So, thoughts to be determined, but as of right now, I'm leaning toward a 2.5 star. So there you have it. Those are all the books that I read in the month of February. Let me know down below if you have read any of these and if you agreed with me or if you have a different opinion. Don't forget to tune into the live shows for City of Dragons. This one, I believe, is on Sunday, March 6th. The Bone Ships, which will be on Cassidy from Covers with Cassidy's channel. I believe this one is Saturday morning, March 5th. The live show on Aaron from Booked and Busy's channel for The Shattered Sun would have happened this past Saturday. So go back and check that one out once you have finished this book. All right, so those are all of my reads for February. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and comment down below. If you have nothing to say and you haven't read any of these books, leave me a crescent moon emoji, because why don't we just go ahead and pay a little bit of homage to House of Sky and Breath, since that has dominated the internet this month. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.